The ranch lay open beneath a sky so wide it made a man feel small, and Caleb had always liked it that way. The land didn't ask questions. It didn't expect answers. It only demanded work, and work was something he understood. He rose before the sun, tended the horses, fixed what the winter time had broken, and let the hours pass without marking them. Years had gone by like that, quiet and unclaimed, and he had stopped thinking of them as lonely. Silence, after all, could be a kind of mercy. That was why the figure standing near the cottonwoods caught his attention so sharply. He noticed her first because she didn't move. Most people who wandered onto his land did so clumsily, announcing themselves with noise or fear. This woman stood as still as the trees beside her, dark against the pale grass, watching him as if she were part of the place rather than a stranger passing through it. Caleb straightened from the fence post he'd been repairing and wiped sweat from his brow. The sun was already warm, and the day promised heat. He let his hand rest near his rifle without touching it, not out of panic but habit. Out here, caution was survival. Still, something about her stance made him pause. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't advancing either. She was waiting. After a long moment, she stepped forward. She walked slowly, favoring one leg just enough for him to notice. Her buckskin dress was worn and dust-stained, the fringe frayed with travel. Her hair fell loose down her back, black as wet earth, catching the light when she moved. Her face bore signs of exhaustion, dry lips, hollowed cheeks, but her eyes were sharp, steady, and unafraid. Caleb had seen fear in many forms over the years. He recognized it instantly when it appeared. What he saw in her eyes was not fear, but resolve. She stopped several paces away, far enough to show respect, close enough to speak without raising her voice. "I don't want trouble," she said in careful, deliberate English. "I've walked far. I need rest." Her voice was low, firm, and carried the faint accent of someone who had learned the language through necessity, not comfort. Caleb studied her for a moment longer, taking in the way she stood straight despite her fatigue. "You on your own?" he asked. "Yes." He nodded once. "You hungry?" Her expression changed then, just slightly. Surprise flickered across her face, followed by something like relief. "Yes," she said. That single word settled something in him. Hunger was honest. Hunger didn't lie. He gestured toward the house. "Food's there. You can eat. After that, we'll talk." She inclined her head in a small bow of acknowledgement and followed him at a respectful distance. Caleb noticed she kept her hands visible, her movements careful. She was cautious too, he realized, not frightened, but aware. The understanding between them was unspoken and mutual. Inside, the house smelled of wood, coffee, and dust. It was simple, built for one man and his routines. Caleb set bread and dried meat on the table, poured water into a tin cup, and stepped back. She ate slowly, as if savoring each bite, not rushing, not wasting. He watched from the doorway, unsure why he was paying such close attention. When she finished, she wiped her hands neatly and looked at him. "My name is Nia," she said. "I am Apache." "I'm Caleb," he replied. He didn't add more. Names felt sufficient for now. She told him she had been walking for days, avoiding roads, sleeping where she could. She did not say what she was running from, and he did not ask. People carried their reasons in their own time. "You can stay the night," he said after listening. "Barn's dry, safer than the open." She accepted without argument. That, too, struck him. Many people tried to bargain, to press for more. Nia only nodded. "Thank you," she said, and meant it. That first night, Caleb slept lightly. He was used to sleeping alone, alert to every sound. The wind moved through the grass, the horses shifted in their stalls, and somewhere beyond the house, coyotes called. Once, he thought he heard footsteps, but when he listened more closely, it was only the barn door creaking in the breeze. By morning, she was already awake. He found her drawing water from the well, her movements practiced, efficient. She looked up when she heard him, a faint smile touching her lips. "I did not want to be useless," she said, as if explaining herself. He shrugged. "Work's fine, just don't wear yourself out." She did not answer, but he saw amusement in her eyes, as if she found the idea quietly amusing. Days passed, and then more. Nia did not leave. She never asked directly if she could stay, but every morning she rose with the sun and took on a task without prompting. She helped in the garden, learned the routines of the ranch, and adapted with an ease that surprised him. She moved through the place as if listening to it, learning its moods. Caleb told himself he was simply being practical. Having another pair of hands made the work lighter. But he noticed more than he meant to. He noticed the way she sang softly while working, not words he understood, but melodies that seemed older than the land itself. He noticed how she paused at dawn, facing the rising sun with a stillness that felt almost ceremonial. He noticed how the animals responded to her calm presence. At night, they sat on the porch, the space between them filled with shared silence. Sometimes she spoke of small things, the weather, the condition of the soil, the tracks she'd seen near the creek. Sometimes neither of them spoke at all. Caleb found that he didn't mind. Silence felt different when it was shared. He learned bits of her story slowly. Her people had scattered, driven apart by sickness and violence. The family she had known was no longer whole. She spoke of loss without bitterness, as if bitterness would only weigh her down further. Caleb listened, offering nothing but attention. He did not speak of his own past. Not yet. That part of him remained buried, like a fence post sunk deep into hard ground. Still, something inside him began to shift. The routines he had once clung to now bent, making room for another presence. He caught himself thinking ahead, wondering if she would prefer more beans in the stew, if the extra blanket in the barn was warm enough, if the path to the creek needed clearing for her injured leg. He told himself these thoughts meant nothing. Kindness did not have to lead anywhere. Yet as the days stretched on and spring crept into the land, Caleb sensed that the quiet he had built his life around was changing. It was no longer empty. It was filled with the sound of another heartbeat moving through his world, steady and undeniable, like distant thunder on the horizon. The land changed as spring settled in, and Caleb noticed it in the smallest details, the grass thickening near the creek, the smell of wet earth after rain, the way the mornings grew softer instead of sharp with cold. What he did not expect was how much Nia would change the feeling of the ranch along with the season. Her presence had become woven into the days so quietly that he sometimes forgot there had ever been a time before her. She worked without complaint, learning quickly, asking questions only when she needed to. Caleb showed her how to mend tack, how to check the horse's hooves, how to read the sky for weather. In return, she taught him things he had never known to ask, how to recognize certain plants by touch, how to listen to the wind not just for storms but for direction, how silence could be a language of its own. They spoke more now, though never too much. Nia chose her words carefully, as if each one carried weight. When she laughed, it was quiet and rare, but it stayed with him longer than loud noise ever could. Caleb found himself listening for it, hoping for it, and then wondering when hope had returned to his life without his permission. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sky fade from blue to gold, she began to speak of her past without being asked. Her gaze stayed fixed on the horizon, her voice steady. My people once moved together, she said. We were many, then sickness came, then soldiers, then hunger, the land changed, and so did we. Caleb said nothing, he had learned that interruption would only close the door she had chosen to open. I had a family, she continued. A mother who sang while she worked. A younger brother who followed me everywhere. They are gone now, not all in one day. Loss comes slowly, like water wearing stone. Her hands rested loosely in her lap, fingers still. There were no tears, but grief sat in her words like something long carried. I was promised once, she said after a pause. To a man from another band. It was not love yet, but it would have grown. He died before that could happen. Caleb felt a tightening in his chest, unexpected and unwelcome. He understood that kind of ending, the kind that stole futures before they were formed. I stayed with my people as long as I could, Nia went on. But there was no place for me anymore. Too many mouths, too much fear. I chose to leave before bitterness took root. He finally spoke then, quietly. That takes strength. She turned to look at him, studying his face as if measuring the truth of his words. Strength is not never being afraid, she said. It is walking anyway. That night, Caleb slept poorly. Her words echoed in his thoughts, stirring memories he had kept buried. He had chosen isolation after loss, convinced himself it was strength. Now he was no longer certain. A few days later, it was his turn to speak, though he had not planned to. They were repairing a fence near the far edge of the property, close to the cottonwood tree that stood alone against the sky. Nia paused, her eyes lingering on the ground beneath it. Someone is buried here, she said softly. Caleb swallowed. My wife. The word felt heavy, unfamiliar on his tongue. She died years ago, he added, unsure why he felt the need to explain. Fever. Took her fast. Nia nodded, her expression solemn. I am sorry. He leaned against the fence post, staring at the tree. After that, I stopped living forward, he said before he could stop himself. Just kept things standing, thought that was enough. She did not answer right away. When she did, her voice was gentle. Sometimes standing still is how we survive, but not always how we live. The truth of it struck him harder than he expected. As days passed, the unspoken bond between them deepened. Their movements grew more familiar, more comfortable. Caleb caught himself reaching for a second cup of coffee in the morning without thinking, setting it across from his own. Nia began leaving small signs of care, fresh water by the door, herbs laid out to dry, repairs made quietly before he noticed something was broken. Yet beneath the calm, something restless stirred. The morning the storm came, the air felt wrong from the start. Heavy, pressed down, Caleb recognized it immediately. He saddled the horses early, planning to ride out and check the fence line before the rain made the creek impassable. Nia watched him from the barn doorway. She was unusually quiet, her hands busy with a strip of leather she twisted and untwisted again and again. When he passed her, she spoke. You should not go yet, she said. He paused. Storm won't wait. She hesitated, then nodded, as if accepting a decision already made. By midday, the sky darkened until the land looked bruised. Wind swept across the plains, bending grass and rattling shutters. Caleb finished securing the horses just as the first thunder rolled, deep and distant. Rain began soon after, light at first, then heavier, soaking the ground in minutes. He turned to head for the house, and saw Nia standing near the barn, rain already darkening her clothes, her hair plastered to her face. What are you doing out here? He called. You'll get soaked. She did not move. There is something I must say, she replied. The urgency in her voice made him stop. He walked toward her, rain running down his hat brim, heart thudding for reasons he did not yet understand. They stood a few feet apart, the storm rising around them. Wind tugged at their clothes. Thunder cracked closer now. Please marry me, Nia said. The words struck him with such force that for a moment he could not breathe. The rain, the wind, the world itself seemed to fall silent. What? He asked, certain he had misunderstood. I wish to be your wife, she said again, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. I have thought on this carefully. Shock gave way to disbelief. Caleb took a step back, shaking his head. Nia, you don't know what you're asking. I do, she said. I know who you are when no one watches. I know how you care for this land, how you listen. I know the loneliness you carry. You shouldn't choose me, he said, the words coming out rough. I've already failed at that life once. Rain soaked them both now, thunder rolling overhead. Nia stepped closer, closing the distance he had tried to create. Failure does not mean unworthy, she said. It means human. Caleb felt fear rise in him, sharp, familiar, powerful. Fear of loving again, fear of losing again, fear of believing in something that could be taken away. This isn't something you decide in a storm, he said. Her gaze did not waver. The storm only gave me courage. For a long moment, neither spoke. Rain fell harder, drenching the earth, washing dust from the land. Caleb finally turned away, running a hand through his wet hair. I can't answer you now, he said. I need time. Nia searched his face, then nodded once. There was no anger in her expression. No pleading. I will wait, she said simply. As they turned toward shelter, the storm broke fully overhead, and Caleb knew, whether he admitted it or not, that nothing on the ranch would ever feel the same again. The storm passed during the night, leaving the land washed clean and quiet. By morning, the air smelled new, sharp with wet earth and crushed grass. Caleb stood on the porch with a cup of coffee gone cold in his hands, watching the mist lift from the fields. He had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard Nia's voice again, steady, brave, unyielding, and felt the weight of what she had offered him. She did not avoid him the next day, nor did she press him. She moved through the morning as she always had, tending the horses, gathering eggs, preparing food. If anything, she seemed calmer than he felt. That unsettled him more than anger would have. Caleb tried to return to his routines, believing work would quiet his thoughts. It didn't. Every familiar task felt altered, as if the land itself were waiting for him to choose something. He caught himself watching Nia when she wasn't looking, noticing the confidence in her movements, the quiet certainty that had carried her across miles of danger to this place. He wondered how long she had known what she wanted, and why it frightened him that she knew it so clearly. Days passed. They spoke, but only of practical things. Weather, repairs, chores. At night, they still sat on the porch, though the space between them felt charged now, filled with words neither spoke. Caleb sensed her patience, solid and deliberate, like stone. She had offered him her truth. The rest was his to face. On the third evening after the storm, Caleb found himself riding out toward the far cottonwood without fully deciding to. The horse moved easily beneath him, familiar and sure. When he reached the tree, he dismounted and stood for a long time, staring at the place where his wife lay buried. He had avoided coming here often, as if distance could dull grief. It hadn't. It had only preserved it. I never thought I'd stand here again thinking about a future, he said aloud, his voice rough. I thought surviving was enough. Memory rose unbidden, his wife's laughter, her stubborn kindness, the way she had believed in him when he had not believed in himself. Loving her had not been a mistake. Losing her had nearly convinced him it was. He rested a hand against the cottonwood's bark, feeling its solidity. Life grew again even after storms. Even after loss. The tree was proof of that. When he returned to the ranch, the sun was already low. Nia was in the barn, brushing one of the horses, her movements slow and careful. Caleb leaned against the doorway, watching her for a moment longer than necessary. Nia, he said. She turned, meeting his eyes without hesitation. Yes, I need to talk. She set the brush aside and followed him outside. They stopped near the fence, where the land opened wide before them. The sky burned orange and gold, stretching endlessly. I've been afraid, Caleb said, choosing honesty over caution. Not of you, of what you asked. She nodded. Fear is honest too. I buried my life once, he went on. Told myself it was loyalty. Maybe it was just hiding. Nia listened without interrupting, her expression open, patient. I can't promise I'll never be afraid again, he said. I can't promise this will be easy. She stepped closer. I do not ask for ease. I ask for truth. Caleb took a breath. If you still want this, knowing who I am, knowing my past, I won't turn away. For the first time since the storm, emotion broke through her calm. Her eyes shone, not with tears, but with something brighter. I have not changed my mind, she said softly. They stood there, the decision settling between them like something real and alive. Caleb felt fear still, but alongside it was a sense of rightness he had not felt in years. They did not rush. There was no sudden ceremony, no grand announcement. Word traveled slowly, carried by traders and neighboring ranchers, met with raised brows and quiet curiosity. Caleb did not care. The land knew them. That was enough. They spoke often now, learning the shape of each other's days, each other's silences. Nia taught him about her people's ways, about choosing partners not for convenience but for balance, about sharing burdens without keeping score. Caleb taught her the written rules of this land, the systems and expectations she would face as his wife. They met in the middle, building something neither had known before. On the morning they decided to mark their union, the sky was clear and open. They stood beneath the cottonwood, the same tree that had witnessed loss now standing witness to renewal. There were no witnesses but the wind, the grass, and a few curious horses. Caleb spoke first, his voice steady. I give you my land, my work, my protection, and my failures. Nia placed her hand in his. I give you my strength, my loyalty, my choosing. That was enough. Life did not soften overnight. There were hard days, long ones. There were moments when the world reminded them that difference invited scrutiny, that prejudice did not fade simply because love existed. But they faced those moments side by side, not alone. Nia brought life back into the house, songs in the mornings, warmth in the evenings. Caleb found himself laughing again, surprised by the sound of it. The ranch changed, not in shape, but in spirit. It no longer felt like a place to endure the world. It felt like a place to meet it. One night, months later, they sat on the porch watching stars emerge one by one. Nia rested her head against his shoulder. You were shocked, she said quietly. He smiled. I was terrified. And now, he considered the question. Now I'm grateful you were brave enough to speak first. She smiled, satisfied. The wind moved gently across the plains, carrying with it the sense of something settled, something earned. Caleb looked out over the land he had once believed was all he needed. Now he understood. The land had always been waiting for more life to grow upon it, and so had he.